here with Sam Goodwin. You traveled to every country in the world and were imprisoned in Syria. What does it feel like to have an ISIS representative telling you that they're going to behead you if you don't admit to being a CIA agent?
I was terrified. And frankly, during that entire situation, I was scared, confused. I had no information or anyone to help. I was desperately trying to understand what was happening and would never want to. It's interesting because today I try to reflect on this situation, something that was incredibly challenging for myself and my family. I would never want to relive captivity or that moment, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But on the other hand, and I think more importantly, I would also, interestingly, never want to give up everything that's come from it. The opportunity to grow in character and in faith and in understanding of the stuff in life that actually matters. And so I think we're all stronger and more resilient than we can imagine. And these uncertain times are exactly what we need in order to grow.
Wow, that was a great testimony to the growth mindset. And as a psychologist, I can say that what you experienced in Syria does qualify as a criterion, a traumatic event. So I hope it sounds like you've experienced some what we call post-traumatic growth out of that, which is actually the benefits that can happen from such a severe life event.
Yeah, I think so. Certainly had PTSD, but had some PTG as well. And there's, of course, a very tough time, but there truly have been so many positives that have come from it. And I try to focus on those today because there are so many.
Well, people say that, or I think it was Plato who said that philosophy is a preparation for death. And most people don't have the opportunity to actually prepare for death, practically speaking. So you have a head start on that compared to the rest of us.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually there's actually some comfort in death, I found, because not a single person has managed to conquer it, not even Jesus. And so I became comfortable.
That's a good point.
Became comfortable with that, and that perspective is something that I can lean on today.
Yeah, the great equalizer. So out of all those countries that you visit, I think it was maybe 190. I'm sure the number has changed since then with all the CIA coups going on, countries coming and going out of existence. But what was your favorite country?
So after the United States, I sometimes say my favorite country to travel to, I often say New Zealand. I think it's the most naturally beautiful place in the world. I went in 2014 to visit, and then I actually went back again last week and really enjoyed the opportunity to revisit and be back. It's worth every second of travel required to get to its corner of the globe. Around every corner is another postcard. So I often say New Zealand.
I would love to go there. I'll add that to my list. Now, you said something which caught my attention, that after the U.S., so not everyone can say that their favorite country is their home country. I think it was Chesterton who said something like, the purpose of travel is not to see new lands, but to return to your own country and see it as a new land. And I definitely had that experience after spending a semester abroad. Did you have a different take on the U.S.? If so, how so, after returning from your journey?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I lived as an expat for 7 years overseas. I was in Singapore for 6 and in Dubai for 1. And I think it's really fascinating when we live overseas long enough to be able to then have a foreigner's perspective on our home country. And kind of back to your point, the better understanding others allows us to better understand ourselves. And for me, travel has been the best education I've ever had. It's taught me so many key things. For example, to never judge people by the actions of their government. I've learned that people who have the least often give the most, something I found to be true in all corners of the world. I've learned that every person's why is the same. We all eat, sleep, breathe, want to be happy or chasing some kind of goal. It's only the how that changes. And for me, the United States offers more opportunity than anywhere else in the world. And I'm grateful to be American.
Yeah. So am I. What about the most interesting person that you met on your journey?
Most interesting person that I've met on my journey. Gosh, if this had been, fortunate to meet a range of people, I'm not sure that I could. I'm not sure that I could identify that I could identify just one. I will say I've come to know a handful of the other people in the world who have traveled to every country. There are about 100 or maybe 200 of them. And I appreciate those conversations to be able to share a perspective that only a few of us have. So some of them have been interesting people to talk to.
You had said that there's so many benefits to travel. I was reading Count of Monte Cristo recently, and one thing that happens in that book, which was representative of the culture at that time and place, is that the European aristocrats would travel to other countries, especially I think around like college at university age or post-university age. And that was just considered part of their education. I mean, they were aristocrats. They didn't have to work. They didn't have to make money, but they networked by traveling to other countries. They learn other languages. They learn other cultures. And I just wonder if that's missing a little bit from our U.S. experience.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for me, travel, speaking to your point about the students, it's taught me how to become comfortable being uncomfortable. It's taught me how to let expectations take a back seat and replace stereotypes with real experiences. And I feel so grateful for the opportunities that I've had, and I recommend to everyone doing it as much as they're able to.
Yeah, I think especially for Americans, because we tend to be very American centered, which is partially justified given our position in the world.
Position both politically and geographically. You have to remember we're surrounded by these two big oceans, and international travel can look a little bit different for Americans than people in other parts of the world. At the same time, I often say, to travel, you don't have to go far. It's not like you have to go around the world to travel. There's so many things that we can do, not have to go far.
So now I understand you do coaching, speaking full-time, speaking about your experiences, what you learned from that. You published a book. How did you make that transition? First of all, is that accurate? And so how did you make that transition?
Yep. So I actually have the book right here. And it was published on September 10th this year, so just a couple months ago.
Congrats.
And, thank you. Yeah. It was,
and that's Saving Sam for those who are just listening to this.
Yeah, thank you. It's Saving Sam. It recaps primarily my experience in Syria, but also my family's experience and everything that they went through. And on one hand, I think the book is this unforgettable story that includes, as we were talking about, this travel journey to every country in the world. In regards to Syria, it includes heads of state and high stakes diplomacy, celebrities. But on the other hand, and I think more importantly, the book's about what we all learn through this experience that we believe can help others today. It's about how we can all turn our own challenges and adversities into assets. I don't want to be known for the things that happen to me. I want to be known for the way I've responded to them. And I hope that this book will equip readers to adopt a similar mindset and implement it into their own personal, professional, and spiritual lives.
So I'm going to ask a question that you've probably never been asked before, and I might have to edit this out depending on your response to it. But in your experience, are cultural stereotypes true?
In my experience, sometimes they are, and they exist for a reason, because sometimes they are, but then oftentimes things do get blown up. I have to come up with a couple specific examples, but I know, like, for example, we hear about the ugly American and how they sometimes will go around and cause issues in certain places. I think there is some truth to that, but there's also, a lot of situations that don't fall under that blanket. So it's kind of a range in my experience.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks for giving us a little bit something there. So you speak a lot about your experiences, what you learned. Can you just give us your top 3 takeaways from your experiences?
Yep. So my primary theme that I talk about is uncertainty. Essentially, I was pushed to a point of overwhelming uncertainty, truly life or death. But through that, I learned some things that helped me, and some things that I think can help all of us when we're facing our own breeds of uncertainty in our personal, professional lives. My primary key takeaways are lean into gratitude, control the things that we can control, and recognize uncertainty as an opportunity. My presentations are narrative driven and include all of the dramatic elements of my stories, but also weave in and conclude with key principles that I think, primarily these 3 key principles that I think we can all implement into our own lives.
Yeah. When we lean into uncertainty, we become anti-fragile, because uncertainty is often what holds us back, but it's also the flag pointing towards our growth, because we're uncertain, because it's new territory. It's area for growth.
Absolutely.
With all the connections you've made, do you happen to know anyone going into the Trump administration?
Yeah, so this situation happened to me during Trump 1, and through that came to know a handful of people. Some of them are going back in now, so connected to them. However, this topic of hostages and wrongful detainees is incredibly bipartisan. It's nonpartisan. And it's one of the most bipartisan issues in all of politics. So have connections in the Biden administration, in the Trump administration, Democrats, Republicans have connections on both sides of the aisle, so to speak. And that's just as a result of this being a very nonpartisan issue. I mean, virtually everybody agrees that bringing a wrongfully detained American home safely is a critical cause.
Now, this is something I heard. I don't know if it's true. Is it true that the U.S. doesn't negotiate with terrorists or something like that? Or
the official position of the United States is to not negotiate with terrorists, and there are a range of ways to look at that, but that is the official position as of now.
Robert O'Brien, the NSA that's a very influential position. Did he replace General Mike Flynn?
Trump had a couple national security advisors, but he was the last one.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's a privilege to work with such a high-ranking official. I hope he treated you well.
He's a great person, and he did a lot to support my family, and I have a lot of respect for him.
Do you have any recommendations for Trump's nominee for national security advisor?
Well, he nominated Mike Waltz. Actually, his wife, Julia Neshawat, is also a friend of mine, and she worked on these cases as well. Unsure exactly what the Trump's national security, foreign policy stance is going to be on all the issues exactly. But I think there are a lot of opportunities to bring peace and stability to the United States and to the world. And so I'm optimistic about the people who are coming into the administration.
All right. Well, what an experience you've had. What a privilege you had. I hope that some of our listeners can participate in some of that. Do you have any parting words for us, Sam?
Thanks, Johann. I really just appreciate the opportunity to be here, and happy to connect with any of the listeners. If they want to reach out to me, feel free to do that. Sam Goodwin on all the normal social media platforms. My book's called Saving Sam. If you'd like to dive in deeper to some of the things that I talked about today, you can get that everywhere books are sold. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me anytime. I would love to hear from you if you're inclined to do that.
And your personal website is just samgoodwin.com. Is that right?
It's samrgoodwin.com.
samrgoodwin.com. Okay. Well, thanks for your time, Sam.
Thanks. I appreciate this opportunity. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.